Okay. So this is the presentation of the first results of the pilot study, where we investigate the appetitive and aversive conditioning in humans. This actual study is the pilot to the functional MRI study, which will have the same paradigm but will be performed in the scanner. We have 2 days. On one of these days we perform appetitive conditioning, on other day aversive. The conditioning consists of 2 phases: acquisition phase, initial phase, and reversal phase. In reversal phase, the CS plus and CS minus are changed. If some CS pluses were used during the appetitive day, they are not used during the aversive. So only one pair of CS plus of symbols is used for appetitive or for the aversive. So we use these 4 symbols: square and diamond, which is a turned square, and the trapeze, and what is called rhomboid, that's trapeze 35-degree turned. So, and initial and reversal phase, they had no separators between them, only they had the questionnaires after the habituation phase and the questionnaires after the actual experiment. There will be a reversal the patient did not, the subject did not know before. And the acquisition and reversal had 32 trials each, 16 CS pluses, 16 CS minuses. So 16 CS pluses in acquisition, 16 CS pluses in minuses in acquisition initial, and 16 CS pluses and 16 CS minuses in reversal acquisition. 10 of 16 CS pluses were reinforced, so it was a partial reinforcement paradigm. In general, what happens in the conditioning? So there is a conditioned stimulus, which actually in the beginning just a symbol which causes no reactions. We may say that no emotional reactions, but it actually does not cause any, we believe does not cause any types of reactions. It is not associated with anything, which is paired in time with some kind of unconditioned stimulus, which causes reactions without any conditioning. In our case, it's the money in appetitive and the electrical stimulation in aversive. So we show the symbol, and then after some period of time we show the money or make an electrical stimulation. The money or electrical stimulation by themselves, they cause physiological arousal, and during several trials of such pairs, the symbol which was showing before the unconditioned symbol can cause the physiological response by itself. So that's what is called conditioning, if somebody doesn't know, but probably all know. So yeah, that's the conditioning. What we measure, we actually measure in the purely behavioral study, we are measuring the response of sympathetic nervous system. And the arousal and the high level of activation of sympathetic nervous system can be seen by these measures: pupil size, PPG, ECG, breathing rate, and the EDA. Changes in EDA, which is actually the changes in activity of eccrine sweat glands. Here results are presented for pupil size and the EDA. First, a little bit a few slides about the anatomy and physiology of sympathetic nervous system. So the actual nerves that go to the effector organs, which is for pupil size is musculus dilatator pupillae, and for EDA is a sweat gland, is the postganglionic sympathetic nerves, which go, as for every sympathetic nerve, from truncus sympathicus or sympathetic chain ganglia. So to the musculus dilatator pupillae, it goes from the musculus that dilatates pupil, it goes from the superior theorical ganglion, and for the sweat glands that we actually measure, it goes from the C8-T1 level of spinal cord. We measured it on the palm, so with the region of innervation of the nervus ulnaris. Before going to the sympathetic trunk, the the preganglionic nerves, they go from the spinal cord, from the ventral horn, from the region nucleus intermediolaterales. So together. So that's the same pathway as for the same pathway actually for the nerves that go to the eye and to the sweat glands. But before, they go through the kind of a long chain of the central autonomic network. And this chain is quite different for the sympathetic nerves that go to the musculus which dilates pupil, and for the sympathetic nerves that go to the eccrine glands. And the idea is to show that the anatomy is different, and they have different inputs from different parts of the autonomic nervous system, central and peripheral, on the different levels. So it makes clear that why those responses that people have, and they will be different in the probably in the speed of conditioning and in the rate of conditioning, or better to say in the speed of conditioning and the speed of extinctions, because actually those systems that we measure, they are the same on the peripheral level, they are very similar, but they are different on the central level. But there are still some there are still some common features for them, which actually the representation mostly in anterior cingulate cortex. They also both go through the hypothalamus and through the region which calls locus coeruleus, arousal, physiological arousal, and also it has the connections with all the regions which are believed to play a role in the emotional reactions. So this locus coeruleus, it has connections with the cerebellum, with the substantia nigra, with the VTA, with the limbic system, thalamus, and so on. So here it's shown. So so even on the level of spinal cord, they're kind of different. So those are different nerves which go to the sweat glands, and this which goes to the muscles of the pupil. And they have different inputs. So they go down as the components. So there are three main pathways for the central nervous autonomic system: the medial forebrain bundle, dorsal longitudinal fasciculus, and mammillotegmental tract. They all have the inputs in different rate and with different level of lateralization, I would say, from all those many structures. If shown separately, yeah. So generalized graph for the eccrine sweat gland, we have this posterior hypothalamus. It goes through the pons, through the reticular nuclei, and here it goes to the spinal cord in the intermediate lateral zone of spinal cord, and to through the preganglionic sympathetic axon to the paraventral sympathetic ganglion. So this part is the same actually for both, and here we also can see it's from the dilatation of the pupil. So it's intermediate lateral column, yeah, and the superior cervical ganglion, which is the part of the paravertebral sympathetic ganglions. It also goes through hypothalamus and through locus coeruleus, I think, proper pronounce. It is not mentioned here, but it's one of the medulla reticular nuclei, as I remember. So the pathways are quite, they may say they have the same component, they have different components. So this is actually what we're interacting with. So we are interacting with a sympathetic nervous system and its responses to arousing events, which we believe. Generalized graph, which says the main components. So this is the cortex, this is the paraventral nuclei of hypothalamus, this is the locus coeruleus. Oh my god, I have to. Okay, I'm not gonna. I have to know how it's pronounced. Google Translate. Sorry for that. The complicated word. It's not, it's English and they want to in Russian. Russian does not matter, английский.
Locus ceruleus.
Ceruleus. Ceruleus. Locus ceruleus. Okay, let's continue. That's complicated part of this locus ceruleus. Yeah, so cortex, paraventral nuclei, locus ceruleus, preganglionic sympathetic pathways in the spinal cord, then the sympathetic ganglia, and goes to the sweat glands and to the iris probably to the eye actually. So, but those regions, those pathways are different, and they have so these pathways are both sympathetic pathways, but on the subsegmental, suprasegmental level, before entering the spinal cord, on the suprasegmental level, before entering the spinal cord, they have different inputs from different parts of the central autonomic networks. I'm not utilizing what are they, but the main idea is kind of to say that they are different. So let's get back to our study, which is I already spent a lot of time to this presentation part. So this actually, before making the main study, we performed the pilot study. It was not a conditioning study. We just exposed subjects to 4 different unconditioned stimuli: the money, 1, 2, and 5 euro, and the electrical stimulation. We had 20 participants. Each had 4 blocks of 4 stimuli. So how it was? It was 1 euro, then it was the stimulus, then we asked the questions, 4 questions. How did they feel about the stimulus in the terms of fear, arousal, and stimulation? Then 5 euros, electrical stimulation, and 2 euros. So we have this 4 blocks of stimuli, and the stimuli were randomized by inside each block. So they were in the random order, but inside the block to avoid 3 same symbols in the row. And what we can say about the results, so here are shown the results are shown as the mean and the standard error. Now it's seen that the electrical stimulation response is higher, and the scatter plot, which represents the each response of all participants altogether. To analyze this, the mixed model was built. Mixed model was built because of the repetitive measurements. Because the repetitive measurement, they have this correlations in errors for the same participants. So random effect was subject variable was picked as a random effect, and the fixed effect in this case for this model were the stimuli. 1 euro reward was picked as an intercept. It's like a reference value. So for now we can see that there is no difference between 1, 2, and 5 euro. Only electrical stimulation causes higher responses. Then what we've done, we analyzed also well, actually on this level we may say that okay, there was no difference, but we also take a look like block by block with the same approach. Take a look by I'm not gonna stop like in details to save some time. If somebody will be interested, we can get back and look in more details. But what we've done, we analyzed block by block inside each block. So we compared 1, 2, 5 euro and electrical stimulation separately inside the first, second, third, and fourth block. And also we analyzed them inside each value depending on the order of appearance. So we analyzed like only electrical stimulation. So we analyzed it all together depending on the order of appearance. But then we also analyzed it like only 1 euro when it was first in trial, when the 1 euro was after 1 euro, when 1 euro was after 2 euro, when 1 euro was after 5 euro, when 1 euro was after electrical stimulations. So for each, for the stimulus of each modality, we have these 5 positions. In general, if analyzed all together and if analyzed inside of one value, we can say that there was also no difference when it goes. The main idea, only the main difference, it was that the electrical stimulation was always higher, and the stimulus which was presented first in the experiment, not in trial, but in the experiment, caused higher responses, and was statistically higher. So the electrical stimulation, the scale is 0.001 millimeter, so 1,000 is 1 millimeter of enlargement of pupil size. So, and that actually electrical stimulation by the level of effect cost in general for all trials, for all subjects, cost 0.278 millimeters higher responses comparing with the money. And also we can say in general for all the first trials taken together, the money and all the monetary rewards and all the electrical stimulations, if we analyze only the first only the stimuli that appear the first in the experiment, like first of 16th, we can say that they cause higher responses, like higher by 0.3 millimeters. In the same time, this statistics, so the values are significant. They are not super reliable because there was different number of observations due to the random order. For example, here you can see the standard error is 0 because we have only one measurement when the €1 was showed after €1. In the same time, quite often we have that €1 was showed after like electrical stimulation. In the same time, it was quite often. But here we have, when we're measuring when we're looking at the €1 reward, what we can say, so €1 was after €1 and €1 was after electrical stimulation. I know it's something to compare with. Okay, €1 after €2. Okay, let's show €5, for example. There are a few times when €5 was first in trial, but they were like a lot of times when the €5 was after €2. But for the €5 it's all the same, it does not matter. And in general, when if somebody will be interested, we can go back to this numbers, but the main effect that is seen is that they cause higher responses. The stimulus causes higher responses if it's shown first in the presentation. And the same picture we can see actually for the EDA. When measuring EDA, once again, the general mixed model, linear mixed model built, the stimulus was picked as a fixed effect coefficient. The predictor, the response value is the EDA, and the random effect is the subject because of repetitive measurements. And we can say that when the €1 taken as a reference value, there was no difference between 1, 2, and €5, but the electrical US caused higher EDA growth, like by 8.8 microsiemenses. So in general, 8.8 microsiemenses is, let me say, quite high. So for average person, the tonic EDA is about, let me say, from the most patients we saw, like from 5 to 10. Some people, they have like extremely high EDA, higher than 20 and even 50. some like closer to 1. There are some non-responders which actually don't show any ADA changes, so it's extremely low. The same approach was done here, analyzed by blocks and analyzed by the order of appearance inside of each value. And in general, main effects are that the first in trial causes higher response, and the electrical stimulus causes higher response. Then there is no statistic for the questionnaires. The patients were asked to rate how do they feel about the stimuli they were exposed to. The scale was originally from 1 to 9, but we switched it from -4 to 4 just for convenience of comparing. And so I will begin from the end. Like for the fear and arousal, there is not so easy to compare. What we can say that for fear, €5, €2, and €1 reward, they cost the same level of fear, and actually the money costs mostly the same level of arousal. The data graphics are represented as medians and interquartiles intervals. And what also we're looking for, we're looking to fit the level of unpleasantness to the level of, also in the questionnaires, we're looking to fit the level of unpleasantness of aversive stimuli would be the same as the level of pleasantness of appetitive. And here we show that this €1 reward has pretty much the same level of pleasantness as electrical stimulation has a level of unpleasantness. Yeah, 2 to -2. And the same as all questions. So we can stop on any slide once again if it's needed. I'm just going through, and so I'm going through with making accents on the, we'll say, most valuable parts. But if something is not clear to you or causes more interest in the discussion part, we can go back and discuss more precisely. So here are shown the level of fears by blocks. So as here we show like all together and by blocks. The same we've done for questionnaires. So this data is represented for all 16 questions, like generalized to any answers to actually four questions. And here it's a block by block. So first block, second, third, and fourth, which pretty much the same. This balance stays as it was for 4 blocks. Only we say kind of some level of habituation, of course. So the overall response, it decreases in absolute values, but the same, for example, as for the valence and for the STEAM evaluation. Yeah, electrical stimulation causes approximately the same level of unpleasantness that €1 causes a level of pleasantness. By the responses, by the subjective meaning of the patients, €5 is more pleasant than the electrical stimulation. So the absolute value of pleasantness, subjective pleasantness of €5 is higher than level of unpleasantness of €2 for the subjects. So based on all this, we decided that we're going to pick €1 as appetitive stimulus. So these are the symbols. Actual conditioning paradigm, how looks the one trial. So first it goes inter-trial interval with the fixation cross. This time is from 7 to 11 seconds, which varies randomly. Then the 7 seconds of presentation of conditioned stimuli. And one last second is overlapped. So it's a traced condition. One last second is overlapped with the appetitive or aversive US. And then once again, in the trial interval with the condition and with the fixation cross. Here the responses are shown, the CS response window and UF response window. Here the baseline. Okay, how it actually looks. So what our participants looks here, the actually 66 trials. So after the question, so we had the habituation, then questionnaires, and then actual conditioning phase. But what we've done, we've added 2 additional unreinforced, one CS plus and one CS minus, in the beginning of conditioning. They were not analyzed, and they were kind of they were not separators between this second mini habituation and the actual initial and reversal conditioning. They are not analyzed, they are just added because the people have the higher responses. So it's the second habituation phase, second small habituation. So aversive and appetitive were the same on both days. The upper row is the initial, lower is aversive. You see the CS plus and CS minus are changed, and 32 in both, 16 CS pluses, 16 CS minuses, 10 of 16 CS pluses are unreinforced. Yeah, so here how it looks. One small kind of not assumption to this point. So as I've told, this is the pilot study for the functional MRI study, which will use the same paradigm. The idea of this actually 2 phases, appetitive and aversive, two types of conditioning, appetitive and reversal, and this counter-conditioning when there is an appetitive and reversal, is to see the prediction errors. So in this case, we'll have the opportunity probably to observe different types of prediction errors, positive and negative. So positive and negative appetitive prediction error, and positive and negative aversive prediction error. So actually all type of prediction error we're gonna be able to observe during this study. What are the regions, and we're waiting the regions associated with the prediction error. The main questions that is asked in the actual conditioning study is whether those prediction errors are represented in the same place or in the different place, and is the sign, are the assigned or unsigned prediction errors. And the most general questions are all those types of prediction errors are represented in the same place, in the same regions, or in the different regions of the cerebellum, and are there any associations with the VTA? Okay, so actual conditioning process. So here are 66 trials. This is in the middle. You see the black dotted line, which is said after that we have the reversal. So the first phase is the initial, and here the red line is the CS response to the conditioned stimulus. So it's not the response to the US. So in case of electrical shock, it's aversive. It's not the response to electrical shock. It's the response to the stimulus, which response to the stimulus which kind of goes before the electrical shock. Oh, here we see that for reversal the conditioning is pretty much fast. So just from the beginning of the experiment we see that the red line is the higher, and then the second part is the reversal. Here the green line becomes CS plus and the red CS minus, and what we actually can see, it's the extinction of the previously conditioned response to one of the symbol, and acquisition of conditioned response to other symbol, which I may say takes a bit longer time. So here how we analyze this. Here we present the data for CS plus first half of this. So this is the first 16 trials. These are another 16 trials for the initial, and here the reversal stage, also first 16 trials and the next 16 trials. Appetitive CS plus, CS minus, red CS plus, and then the CS minus. So when only the stimulus was taken as the predictor, and the pupil size is taken as a response value, we can see that in the beginning, during whole experiment, CS plus is higher than CS minus in all like parts of condition and initial and reversal. And we can say that CS plus causes 1.17 millimeters higher response comparing with the CS minus. Oh, now we can go actually back and go to the response to the actual electrical stimulation. So effect, we didn't observe the effect here. No, why? We observed the effect. We can say that the effect, we can say that the effect is plus 79. What is the difference? Okay, it's moment, we can take a look. So the average effect for the the average effect okay, like for 1 euro at the end of conditioning is like plus 0.5 millimeters, and for the electrical stimulation 0.8. And here what we can see, what are the conditioned responses? So 0.5 for aversive, yeah, its conditioned response is of course lower than the actual response. It's quite interesting because the Pavlov showed the dog the meat. Does not matter, not going to talk about this. So if analyzed all together, when taken all together, all phases, the beginning and the end of the experiment, if taken all together, and initial and reversal, we can say that in the beginning and in the end, the CS plus is higher than CS minus, probably to the fast condition to aversive stimuli. So when we're looking at the effect of both predictive variables, aversive CS plus and the phase, beginning and the end, so they are not different from the beginning. So the CS plus in the beginning is the same as CS plus in the end. Then we analyzed inside of the phases. So we just taken separately initial phase and reversal phase. And again, we can say that the CS plus is higher than the CS minus, and it is the same for initial. It's the same for the first trials and for the last trials, which says that the condition is pretty fast. Let's now see on the appetitive. It's when looking at the pupil size, we can say there is not much of a conditioning probably, or only mainly it's kind of in the end for the reversal phase. We may say there is a conditioning for some reason, but it looks like there is a conditioning and then there is an extinction. So it's not possible to say what actually happens, but as Pavlov described, there is a situation when the stimulus is really of low intensity. It causes the condition, and the extinction like happens. Extinction happens just like extinction happens during the acquisition. And here also represented in the same way. So medians of the pupil size response together with the standard error and the scatter plot overlaid within each response separately. The fixed values taken the phase, the start of the experiment, or the start of the phase, or the end of the phase, start of the phase, end of the phase, and the CS plus and CS minus. So the stimulus and the part of the phase were picked as the fixed effects. Random effect, again, is the subject. Dependent variable is the pupil size change. So nothing significant was found, actually. No, we can say, I mean, but we cannot say. When analyzed separately we analyze in the initial phase and reversal phase, and there is nothing significant as well. Where we can see here that the standard error, the median probably is higher for the CS plus, but still it's not significant. Let's go back to the let's compare in appetitive and aversive. So and yeah, the conditioning overall, the CS plus in the beginning and in the end of the trial as CS plus, and the initial phase causes higher response than in the aversive, probably because of the habituation. Now let's look at the aversive EDA response. So the EDA also, we can say the conditioning happens like almost at once. So almost at once the CS plus becomes higher than the CS minus, and this also happens during the reversal. Once again, it can be seen then there is a reversal of the previous CS plus and the extinction of the CS sign, which was the CS plus previously, and the acquisition for the other CS plus, which previously was CS minus. So the EDA response is the same pattern, the same level, I would say, of significance for the EDA. So the CS plus was higher than the CS minus in both. When analyzed together, the initial and reversal, the CS plus was higher than the CS minuses, but there was no difference between the CS plus in the beginning and CS plus in the end. So I mean, CS plus was significantly higher in the beginning of experiment, and CS plus was significantly higher in the end, in the beginning of the acquisition and in the end. And the same when analyzed separately, aversive and initial and reversal. Well, here we can say that there is a conditioning during the whole phase for the initial. I mean, maybe if we will divide not to 2 but to 3 parts, like 10 trials, probably we will see that the CS plus is different. Yeah, but now we can say that this CS plus is pretty much higher than the CS plus is significantly higher than CS minus in the beginning and in the end of conditioning. But for the reversal, there is actually nothing significant. So there is only trend-like significance for the reversal in the and in the end, in the end of the reversal condition. Here is so it was a reversive CSD, and here is the appetitive CSD. And for appetitive, I would say it's kind of in other way. So there is a conditioning, but it seems that the conditioning happens in this second part, which actually is the case. So it shows that there is a significant difference between CS plus and CS minus, and this difference is by 0.3 microsiemens between CS plus and CS minuses at the end of conditioning, both for initial and for reversal phase. When analyzed separately, initial and reversal, we can say that there is no conditioning effect already significant. There is no significant conditioning effects. Even actually there is no trend-like effects for the reversal phase, but for the initial phase there is a conditioning effect in the last part of the trial. Yeah, we can clearly actually see it. So the first, the CS minus even seems to be a little higher than the CS plus, and then in the second part, where there is a conditioning, appetitive conditioning, we have the significant difference. So the CS plus is by half of the microsiemens. It's higher than CS minus. But there was no reversal conditioning. There was no reversal conditioning. Okay, now what approach we've made. So the general idea for pupil size is not so easy. Due to the literature, it appears that the people can be divided on sign trackers and goal trackers. We are not divided them here with any mathematical methods. I've just actually looked through all the participants, and it appears that there are two patterns. So here you can see one average trial. Here are the seconds. So this is the average CS plus and CS minus trial for all participants, for all phases of, in this case, of initial. So here goes the conditioned stimulus. Here is the time of the presentation, 6 seconds of the presentation. In these 6 seconds we have the unconditioned stimulus. Yeah, so in the beginning, first 16 trials from 1 to 16, beginning of the conditioning, there is actually no response. There are no much differences, but for these subjects, yeah, for both groups of the for both groups of the subjects, but for one of them there is a clear condition. So last 2 seconds before the US arrival, they have this conditioned response, and for other subjects there seems that there is no conditioning. So in the literature, like for the last 3 years, it said that some people, in the case of appetitive conditioning, they don't show this increase in the pupil size when they are waiting for the money. Like they're just, there are different ways to explain this. One of the explanations that is now kind of used in the literature is that there are sign trackers and goal trackers, and the goal trackers, they just like money, they are not focused on the signs which predict the money. The sign trackers are the opposite. The sign trackers are the opposite. They actually can be conditioned with a CS plus. So that's something that's already described, but I've divided them just by looking on them in this way. And then we made the same method on others, but only for the participants. It's actually the half. So not the half, 8 of 20. A bit less than a half. So 8 of 20 participants show this pattern when they show the good appetitive condition by the measures of pupil size. Actually, what can also be done? So these are who are not conditioned. They have lower response in general, we can say. Yeah, the people, they like money less. But here we actually observe the conditioned response, and the conditioned response is higher for the CS plus. So they have the conditioned response, we may say. So sorry, unconditioned response. But though they have the unconditioned response, it's not so distinct from the unconditioned, less distinct from the unconditioned for these well-conditioned subjects. Yeah. Maybe the people who are like money, I have to look on this we have some questionnaires. Okay, so and now once again aversive people side CS response, and now we can compare. So this is the first all subjects, and then the only the one that better conditioned. But once again we divided them by the measure of the pupil size responses. We divided them on base of their response to appetitive conditioning. Oh, in general, we'll see that those people, they have overall, I would say, higher sympathetic reactions. So the red line is more distant here. So the CS plus is differentiated better. The pattern is pretty much the same as for all subjects. So actually, mostly nothing changes here except the appetitive conditioning. So the aversive conditioning is almost the same, but the responses are higher. So overall difference between CS plus and CS minus is like 0.25 millimeters with the same level of significance. And previously it was 0.17. And what we can see here, once again, the same level. So, and in the initial phase and the reversal phase, they have this also conditioned in. So the conditioning can be seen in the beginning and in the end of conditioning, in the initial and the reversal. Now let's look at the appetitive. For the pupil side, there was no appetitive conditioning for all the subjects, but for when we analyze these 8 subjects, here how it looks. So here the red line is kind of pretty much better, and the green as well. And here we can see, so the pattern is completely different. And here we can kind of clearly see that there is an appetitive conditioning at the end of the experiment. Appetitive condition in the end of the experiment, and it is the same actually as it was shown for the EDA. So for the EDA, appetitive EDA, it was for appetitive EDA, it was also conditioning only seen in the second part. So no difference between CS plus and CS minus in the first part, but in the second. So the appetitive conditioning in the second part for initial, but still no conditioning for reversal. Once again, as it was for appetitive EDA. Only for initial, but no conditioning for reversal. No difference between CS plus and CS minus in reversal during the first 16 trials and last 16 trials. Let's look on the EDA conditioning of those subjects. So the aversive EDA, it's also a little bit higher for those subjects, but not super, not dramatically. So the only thing that is changed actually for this subject, that they have this appetitive conditioning by the measures of the pupil, and it's the way how they are conditioned. It's similar with the data that we have taken from the EDA for all subjects. So the conditioning can be seen in the last phase of initial conditioning, in the last part of the initial condition. So for aversive, once again, they are conditioned during they are conditioned if analyzed together, they are conditioned. So if analyzed together CS plus and if analyzed together initial and reversal, CS plus is higher than CS minus in both in the first and in the second part of conditioning. If analyzed separately, only initial phase or only reversal phase, we can say that once again there is no more condition in these subjects, so they're still conditioned only for the initial phase. And the appetitive CS EDA, we again see that the response is higher. Appetitive, once again, is conditioned only in the end phase of initial. So as an assumption, we can say that in general all the subjects, the appetitive conditioning can be seen in the second part of the initial conditioning. And for aversive, it can be seen during the all phases, during the all stages of initial and reversal phase. And if saying for the people with the pupil size, it's better seen for the one group than for the other. So we kind of artificially divided them here, but I think in general, if taking the population, if take overall like all the pupil population, all the humans in the world, they probably can be found a lot of different patterns of how the pupil, of how the sympathetic nervous system, or how to say, of how this component of sympathetic nervous system responds to conditioning. So probably there are like, the classification probably can be much broader in general. Okay, the questionnaires are not analyzed, but also we asked the people how did they feel about this stuff, and here we asked them about the fear. So how do you fear? Oh, about the CS plus and CS minus is pretty much about the appetitive stimuli. It's pretty much the same. Nobody is afraid of money, but people have some fear to electrical stimulation, CSs. Actually, now we can compare the fear of CS and the fear of US. So initially at the beginning, so this is the for acquisition, so early phase, late phase, this is the initial, this is the reversal. Oh, there is a habituation. I don't know why they were afraid of the CS plus. Okay. CS plus fear early, CS plus fear late. They should be changed with the places. I have to analyze this questionnaire to be more sure what happens, because I kind of forgotten a little bit. So that's the overall idea. It was a kind of a training presentation, but if you liked it, you can ask me some questions if for some reason you will see it on YouTube. Okay, thank you everybody who watched. I will go to sleep and repeat once again tomorrow.